A very warm welcome to this event for the Love Reading Lit Fest. It is part of our Works in Translation strand. I'm delighted today to introduce you to a whole slew of books, in fact, published by the wonderful Banipal. Many of you will know is a magazine that specializes in Arabic literature in translation. I have to confess, in the interest of transparency, that I'm a trustee of the Saïd Gobash Banipal Prize for Arabic, Literary Arabic Translation. Our author today is Saïd Khatibi, who's published a wonderful new book called Sarajevo Firewood. He's a novelist, travel writer, translator, and cultural journalist who was born in 1984 in Blezard in Algeria. He writes in Arabic and French and translates between both. Sarajevo Firewood is his third novel in Arabic, the first in English translation, and his other novels are The Book of Errors and 40 Years Waiting for Isabel, about the real-life Swiss traveler Isabel Eberhardt, which won the 2017 Katara Award for the novel. I would point out that Sarajevo Firewood has been shortlisted for the 2020 International Prize for Arabic Fiction. I'm delighted to welcome into the Love Reading Lit Fest, as I am delighted to welcome Georgia de Chamberet, who is a bilingual editor, rewriter, French to English translator, and who has written herself for 3am magazine, Words Without Borders, The Independent, The Lady magazine, that I used to be the literary editor of, Banipal, Prospect magazine, Times Literary Supplement, and many, many more. She currently writes for BookBlast Diary. And just briefly, Georgia, tell us what BookBlast is for those of us that don't know.
Well, BookBlast was founded, first of all, good afternoon. Many thanks for inviting me to join into your splendid Love Reading Literature Festival. BookBlast was founded in '97 with the aim of breaking translation and new writing from the margins into the mainstream by any means necessary. So we were agented then. Now we tend to do more reviewing and podcasting and participating in wonderful events. So it's a portfolio of activities that we have, but with that kind of focus remit.
Fantastic. And you've very kindly thrown yourself into us to assist with the questioning of Saïd and to deal with some of the translation. I'd just like to set up right in front and center that the Banipal edition of Saïd Firewood is beautifully translated from the original Arabic by Paul Starkey. Georgia, can I throw to you? And perhaps you'd like to kick us off with some questions to Saïd.
Absolutely, thank you. Indeed, so Sarajevo Firewood is one hell of a read. It's absolutely gripping. It's a sort of combination of a whodunit and a bad trip. So Saïd, to what extent is it a reflection of your own experiences of civil wars, be they Algerian and the Bosnian in the 90s?
Thank you so much. I have to answer in English or French.
Comme vous
So,
voulez.
si vous voulez en français, whatever you feel.
Okay. Je crois que moi-même, je suis un enfant de la guerre.
I feel that me, myself, I am a child of war.
Yeah. Je crois que les gens de ma génération en Algérie, on connaît la guerre civile en Algérie des années 90.
My generation who experienced the Algerian civil war of the 90s.
Et je crois que toutes les guerres se ressemblent. Toute guerre commence par un mensonge.
All wars are similar in that they start with a lie.
Alors en Algérie comme en Bosnie, à cette époque-là, les femmes et les intellectuels ont été la cible des ennemis.
Okay. So with Algeria and Bosnia, it was intellectuals and women were the initial targets.
Donc, je crois qu'on est en face de deux guerres similaires.
So we are, in fact, looking at two quite similar wars. There are parallels. Okay, but your experience, your actual experiences, because in the book, there's an amazing array of characters. And of course, I don't want to do a plot spoiler, but there's an amazing murder in the middle. I mean, to what extent were you, if you like, up close to killing, be it of the war type or people acting out? You know, violence begets violence, right? So maybe the cafe owner, you know, he's very angry and then he's murdered in anger, and you know, that kind of escalation in the private and the, if you like, public, the what's going on the outside, they sort of meld. I mean, to what extent the violence that you experienced, is that mirror? Did you write about that in your book from your own experiences?
Yeah, I had experience, of course. I had experience, of course, in 90s, not only me, all Algerian people, of course. And je crois, après une guerre, le plus malheureux, c'est pas la guerre en elle-même, mais c'est après la guerre. C'est le trauma, c'est les cicatrices qui restent.
Okay.
Donc,
so Saïd says that the thing is not the war itself, it's what happens after the war, the trauma. It's PTSD essentially, isn't it? Trauma and the wounds, the scarring, the damage that it causes, yes, to everyone who is involved one way or another.
Donc, on vit toujours avec la mémoire de la guerre.
So you always have the memory, the war lives with you in your mind, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. Donc, on a grandi avec toujours les images ou bien le passé de la guerre qui va nous accompagner pour toujours, je crois.
So you always have, I suppose it's what they call flashbacks. You have images that stay with you forever of the war. They're imprinted on your mind. Okay. So now, why is the past important now to us in the present today? Why is the past? Why is all this so important?
Je crois que ce passé-là dont on parle est toujours et encore présent. Il est toujours en prison. J'ai l'impression qu'on n'a rien appris de notre passé et qu'on est en train de répéter les mêmes erreurs et que l'histoire se répète encore.
Okay. So the past is still very much in the present. It feels as though we haven't learned anything. And basically the same mistakes are repeated again and again and again, like in a loop. So have we learned anything? No, c'est ça. Donc, on n'a rien appris. Ça continue, on répète, on répète, on répète. Okay, c'est ça. So it's for people to see. So this book, it's people, what kind of reactions then? People reading this, it opens their eyes. Les yeux sont ouverts, les lecteurs, quel genre de réactions vous avez reçues? What kind of reactions have you had, people, to what you describe and portray?
Yeah. En fait, j'étais surpris de réactions. Je ne m'attendais pas.
Saïd was surprised by the reactions. He did not expect the kind of reactions that he got. Oui.
L'un des moments forts, peut-être, qui m'ont marqué, j'étais dans le salon de livres à Alger en 2018, je crois.
So a key moment is in 2018. This is a seminal moment for him. He was at the Salon du Livre, the book fair in Algiers.
And j'ai rencontré des Bosniens qui vivent en Algérie.
And he met some Bosnians living in Algeria.
Ils ont quitté leur pays en Bosnie pour aller en Algérie. Et là, ils ont trouvé une autre guerre dans les années 90.
Okay.
Donc,
so they left their homeland to get away from war and came and settled in Algeria, and then they found themselves in the middle of another war.
Et voilà, j'ai vu combien les deux pays sont semblables, sont similaires dans leur drame, notamment
This
dans les
made me
drames.
see how many similarities there are between each country in terms of this drama, the war, their wars. Okay. So how easy is it to forgive a regime and its former aggressors? I mean, is there any way? Yes, can you make peace in some way? Can you, within yourself, are you able to do that? How easy is it or not?
Je suis pas un juge pour pardonner ou condamner. C'est pas mon rôle.
No. Okay. So you're not. Yes, indeed. Saïd said he's not a judge to forgive. It's not his role. But
mais je crois le plus important, c'est que les gens apprennent, en tirent des leçons pour que le passé ne se répète pas.
Yeah. So the most important thing is that people know about it and learn from it in order to not repeat the same mistakes and for the same events, the same kind of war to happen again. So your story is actually partly set in three. It's set in Algiers, the Algerian capital, Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and the Slovene capital, Ljubljana. Did you actually grow up in a capital city or in an urban community? Were you always, vous étiez toujours un citadin, ou est-ce que vous avez vécu aussi à la campagne? Because it's the civil war within the country and the city, it's a slightly different experience.
Une cité dans un milieu urbain, ouais.
So you're always in the urban, okay. Your novel is a terrible indictment of what men have done to the world and shows how the violence of ethnic cleansing is particularly vicious and personal, impacting the lives and minds of ordinary people. So what could be done, in your view, to attempt to reduce or at least eliminate or at least reduce the fanatical hatreds which so specifically underpin civil war? What can be done?
Je crois que les guerres civiles viennent notamment quand on n'a pas résolu nos propres problèmes internes. En Algérie comme en Bosnie, on regarde le futur sans qu'on discute notre passé, notre présent aussi.
Okay, so I think civil war, it happens when you haven't, the regime, the country, they haven't dealt with or looked at properly their proper problems, the very issues and conflicts. Internal issues and conflicts are unresolved, and we don't, et donc ça bouillonne, so that something happens and then it all boils up. Oui.
Alors, si nous voulons éviter des drames, je crois qu'il faut d'abord qu'on discute notre présent et qu'on corrige les erreurs du passé pour qu'il n'y ait pas de nouveaux drames.
So a way forward is to find a way of discussing these different problems and finding a way to settle, in a way, old past scores, if you like, so that one can then move forwards into the future without carrying these burdens of the past. Okay. Écoutez, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. I will now hand over to Paul.
Roger, thank you very much. At that point, Saïd has very kindly offered to read an extract. So we're now going to hear an extract from Saïd, read in Arabic, and then the translation read to us by the translator in English, Paul Starkey. So we'll come back shortly after those readings.
وجدت باب الشقة مواربا، وهذه ليست من عادات سي أحمد الذي يحرص على غلق الباب والنوافذ ولا يسمح لابنيه باللعب سوى في غرفتهما. ما إن دخلت حتى صادفني منظر الشرطيين يقفان كشمعتين متناظرتين في الصالون، ونادى تجلس على الأريكة وهي تضغط على رأسها براحة يديها. أفزعني وجود الشرطيين أكثر من منظر نادى التي شعرت أنها في ورطة ما. استدار إلي ورفعت نادى رأسها. شاهدت وجهها المحمر وركزت في عينيها الدامعتين. أشار علي واحد منهما أن أجلس على كرسي، ثم كلمني بالسلوفينية، وسرعان ما تدخلت نادى بكلمات مختلطة بشهقات بكائها، وأبلغته أنني لا أفهم سوى الإنجليزية. اعتقدت في لحظة من اللحظات أنني أخطأت العنوان، ودخلت الشقة الأخرى. جلست وانتظرت أن تخبرني بما يحصل، لكنها صمتت. وخطبني الشرطي. اسمك ولقبك؟ سليم دبكي. هل تعرف السيد أحمد دبكي؟ نعم، هو عمي. متى التقيته آخر مرة؟ اليوم، افترقنا قبل ساعتين أو أكثر بقليل. فكرت أن عمي عاد وانتقم من زوجته التي أهانته في المقهى وأبلغت الشرطة عنه. أين التقيته؟ في مقهى تريغلاو. هل أخبرك أين ينوي الذهاب بعد مغادرته المقهى؟ كلا. راح ذلك الشرطي فارع القامة يدون كلامي على دفتر صغير، وبحثت بنظري عن ابني عمي. رغبت في رؤيتهما لأطمئن عليهما. طرأ على بالي أن السي أحمد قد انتقم منهما نكاية في زوجته. توقف الشرطي عن طرح أسئلته وراح يتحدث مع زميله، لكنني قطعته وسألته عن سبب وجوده ومساءلته لي. تردد في الرد علي، نظر إلى صاحبه، ثم أجابني بجملة إنجليزية واحدة: وجدنا السيد دبكي مقتولا.
I found the front door ajar, which was unusual for Si Ahmed, who was careful to close the doors and windows and only allowed his two sons to play in their room. As soon as I went in, I was met by the sight of two policemen standing in the reception hall like two matching candles, and Nada sitting on the couch with her head in her hands. The presence of the two policemen disturbed me more than the sight of Nada, whom I felt was in some kind of trouble. The two turned towards me, and Nada raised her head. I could see her face was flushed, and she had tears in her eyes. One of them indicated that I should sit down on a chair, and then spoke to me in Slovenian. Nada immediately interrupted, her words punctuated by tearful gasps. She told him I only understood English. For a moment, I thought I had mistaken the address and walked into another apartment. I sat down and waited for her to tell me what was going on, but she said nothing. Then the policeman addressed me. Name and surname? Salim Dabki. Do you know Mr. Ahmed Dabki? Yes, he's my uncle. When did you last meet him? Today. We parted 2 hours ago, or a bit longer. I thought that my uncle must have come back and taken revenge on his wife, who had insulted him in the cafe and told the police about him. Where did you meet him? In the Triglav cafe. Did he tell you where he was intending to go after leaving the cafe? No. The tall policeman with the bright eyes started to write down what I said in a small notebook. I looked around for my two cousins. I wanted to see them to reassure myself about them. It occurred to me that Si Ahmed might have taken revenge on them to spite his wife. The policeman stopped his questioning and spoke to his colleague, but I interrupted him to ask why he was here and why he was questioning me. He hesitated in replying to me. He looked at his colleague, then answered me with a single sentence in English. We found Mr. Dabki murdered.
Thank you so much, Saïd, and thank you indeed, Paul Starkey. Thank you for Saïd reading in Arabic, the original language in which he wrote Sarajevo Firewood, and Paul Starkey for his magnificent translation into the English. Just to remind you that Sarajevo Firewood is published by Banipal Books. Georgia, thank you for your initial questions that got us started. Fascinating questions, brilliant answers. Thank you very much indeed. If I can ask you now to switch into translator mode, Georgia, as necessary. I have some questions as well. I've thoroughly enjoyed Sarajevo Firewood, Saïd. Can you talk to us a little bit about, in a world where we are becoming increasingly prone to propaganda and censorship on the part of states, on the parts of broadcasters, and war, of course, generates its own propaganda and has its own censorships, how you thought about dealing with this within the context of the novel, where, of course, there are two sorts of wars, a number of different languages, and an extraordinary amount of both censorship and propaganda.
Okay, if I talk about my own experience in Algeria, I could say something maybe one novel like Sarajevo Firewood. With this novel, I could go in the jail. Why? Because in Algeria, after the war, civil war, we made one amnesty. It was like amnesty to stop the war. And it was written, never talk about in cinema, theater, literature. We have to forget everything. It was like this. But we try to talk. We try not forget, because if we forget, I am sure that this past will repeat again. That is what I do, that we have to learn of our past. Censorship is not direct. It's not direct. They will not stop your book or okay, but censorship in the media, that means you will never been invited in the media, for example, a radio, never, in the newspapers, never. It is indirect censorship, and we live with censorship every day in Algeria. So
perhaps I can ask this as a supplementary question. So the fact that you are translated, this is your first novel to be translated into English, which will get you a much wider audience in the English-speaking world, of course. Too few English speakers speak Arabic. How important is this to you in getting your message across, do you feel?
how is important to be translated?
Oui.
Yeah. As author, as writer, I think we need always to know or to see the vision of others. It's not just to stay around you in your country or in your own language. For me, it's very important to know what others they think about the novel, about the text, because I think the literature is to exchange. We don't write to read in our local country or our local, that is the literature by definition is to be written around the world. The thing that I want or I wish this to exchange, to understand other, because also the literature, for me, what is the goal of literature is to understand others, to have communication with others that they are different from us. So with the translation, we have the chance to have communication with different people or with different people from different languages.
Well put. I want to ask you a question about nationalism, Saïd. We live in a world of ever increasing isolationism and nationalism here in Europe, as much as in the Middle East, as much as in the Far East, and increasingly in the developed West. When you were writing Sarajevo Firewood, how important was seeing this rising trend of nationalism and having only to personally witnessed what it can result in? How important was it you to explore those themes, and what was the message you would like to send to readers about the dangers of nationalism? Vous avez compris les questions?
Oui. Thank you for this question. Okay. J'ai dit tout à l'heure que toute une guerre commence par un mensonge. Toutes les guerres commencent par des mensonges.
So as I said, all wars start with a lie.
Le nationalisme, c'est un mensonge aussi.
Nationalism is also a lie.
La guerre en Bosnie, comme la guerre en Algérie, a commencé par cette sorte de nationalisme qui prétend que nous sommes un peuple pur. Que nous sommes un peuple pur.
Both wars in both Algeria and Bosnia started with this kind of nationalism that claims that the purity, that claims a kind of racial purity.
Et dans le roman, j'ai essayé d'expliquer que nous sommes des peuples hybrides.
And in my novel, I've tried to explain that we are in fact hybrid, a blend, we are mixtures.
Le personnage principal, Selim, il découvre que son père n'était pas son père.
So the main character, Selim, one of the main characters, he discovers that actually his father, who he thought was his father, is not his father.
Et c'est la même pour Ivana qui découvre que son père, il avait un autre passé.
And it's the same for Ivana, the other main character of the novel, who discovers that her father had a very different past about which she knew nothing.
Donc, pour faire face au nationalisme, à la guerre, à ce genre de mensonge, il faut...
So to confront nationalism and war and that kind of lie,
il faut apprendre que nous ne sommes pas d'une culture pure, que nous sommes le résultat de plusieurs cultures. Nous sommes le résultat.
So you have to take on board the fact that we are not pure, we are not the result or the outcome of one form of, we are not pure, actually, we are a hybrid, a blend of various cultures and influences.
Qu'il n'y a pas une seule religion, qu'il n'y a pas une seule culture, qu'il n'y a pas une seule...
There's not only one religion, one culture, okay.
Que nous sommes tous ce mélange.
That we're all a mixture. Well.
Oui, c'est bien dit. I just have one last question, and it's about you personally, Saïd. There is a subtext to this book, which is about the nature of homeland, I think, what home represents and what being parted from home does to a person. And once I realized that, on my second reading actually of Sarajevo Firewood, it took me 2 attempts to really try to get to grips with it. I wondered how much of what you write about this, whether I've understood the subtext correctly, but also about your relationship with your own homeland, which is, of course, you are a proud Algerian, but as you've said rather poignantly, if you were to write this in Algeria, it would put you perhaps not in danger, but it would not be well received. Can you discuss, please, just briefly, in as much as you would like to, your own relationship with your own homeland? And as a supplementary question, what does home represent to you now that you are based in Ljubljana?
Je crois que l'histoire de l'Algérien, c'est une histoire de déplacement.
I believe the story of the Algerian is one of displacement.
L'Algérien se déplace pour à la fin revenir au point de départ.
Okay, so the Algerian, he goes away in order to come back, in a sense, come back to square one.
Donc, je crois que j'ai beaucoup appris de ma propre vie ou bien de ma ville natale. Je suis né, qui m'a donné la chance de lire beaucoup.
So I think I learned a great deal about my birthplace, and I read a great deal, about which I read a great deal.
Mais personne ne choisit de partir.
But no one chooses. You don't necessarily want to go away. You don't choose to go away.
Les gens partent pour des raisons peut-être politiques, sociales. Dans mon cas, je suis parti pour des raisons liées au travail.
So people go away perhaps for political reasons, social, economic, or if in my particular case, I left because of work.
And je suis toujours heureux quand je reviens pour les vacances ou pour passer quelques jours dans ma ville natale chaque année.
And I'm very happy whenever I return for holidays or for a few days to my birthplace.
I'm delighted to hear it. I'm delighted to hear it. Thank you very much, Saïd Khatibi, for coming to join us here at the Love Reading Lit Fest. In case you haven't cottoned on already, Sarajevo Firewood is beautifully published by Banipal Books, and we're delighted to have held this event in association with Banipal Books and indeed with BookBlast, which was set up by Georgia de Chamberet. And thank you, Georgia, for being a fantastic co-host with this event. In case you need extra incentive to look up this book and to find it and to buy it, Amara Lakus has written of Sarajevo Firewood, saying it's an astonishing novel, and Khatibi is one of the most original voices in Arabic literature today, something that was agreed with by the judges of the 2020 International Prize for Arabic Fiction, who shortlisted Sarajevo Firewood. Georgia de Chamberet of BookBlast, Saïd Khatibi, author of Sarajevo Firewood, thank you so much for coming to join us here at the Love Reading Lit Fest.
Thank you so much.
Aman aman